So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session, Zero Trust and You, how to build the best security model for your business. I am Preethama, and I will be your host for the day. Our speaker for the session is Vandana Verma, Global Board of Directors at OWASP and Security Solutions Architect at IBM. Please note that the session will be on listen-only mode and will last for 50 minutes, out of which the last 10 minutes will be for Q&A. Requesting all our participants to post their questions in the Q&A window. If you have if you face any issue during the session, I request you all to let us know in the chat section. Also, we have two criteria for the certificate of attendance. The participants need to attend the full session, and they also need to fill out a survey form and give the correct answers to the 3 questions provided by the speaker based on the session, which will be sent out to you one day post the webinar. A quick update to all our women attendees as we celebrate Women's History Month. EC Council is happy to announce that our women attendees can gain access to an exclusive Code Red bundle box bundle by global women leaders Dr. Anuradha Rao, founder of Cyber Cognizance, and Lisa, CISSP certified instructor for the United States Air Force, which will be releasing soon. A bit about our speaker before we start today's session. Vandana Verma is the Security Solutions Architect at IBM India Software Labs and a member of the OWASP Global Board of Directors. She has experience ranging from application security to infrastructure and is now dealing with product security. She has been the recipient of multiple prestigious awards like Cybersecurity Women of the Year Award 2020 by CyberSec Awards, Application Security Influencer 2020 by White Source, and many more. She has also been listed as one of the top women leaders in the field of technology and cybersecurity in India by InstaSay. And without any delay, I'm handing over the session to Vandana. Vandana, please start with the presentation.
Thank you so much, Prathama, for the kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the session today and taking out time on a weekday, because I know that taking out time on a weekday evening is very, very difficult. Sometimes there are issues that actually get stuck on the first days, and especially working days. So without further delay, we are going to speak about Zero Trust and You. The presentation around Zero Trust I have given in the past. Now this one is a bit of flavor around cloud and the new things that I feel that should be considered as part of the Zero Trust. Like, how should be the journey look like when we talk about Zero Trust? Because there are organizations which are small, medium, and then there are enterprise organizations or big organizations which already have the whole setup done. So how they can actually start picking up or from where exactly they can pick up Zero Trust and start envisioning, okay, this is what I need in my organization and this is what I already have. So I will not go ahead and speak about myself because Preethama has already talked about myself. So now when I talk about traditional security model, we'll start off with this. Or if I say that this is what we call as a traditional security model, where we assume the good people are inside the firewall and all the bad people are outside the firewall. That used to be like the traditional model, wherein wherein this whole traditional IT network security is based on this castle and moth concept. So in castle and moth concept security, it is hard to obtain access from outside the network, but everyone inside the network is trusted by default. Like if I am working within the 4 walls of office, everything is trusted. But if I am sitting at home or any other location, or maybe at coffee shop, or maybe in any different country, I might not be trusted. So the problem with this approach is that once an attacker gains access to the network, so once they get into the network, they have free reign from everything inside the network. And we have seen the cases happening wherein a breach happened because an attacker has landed inside the organization. and now they're free to do anything and everything. An organization did not get to know about it for like 3 months, 4 months, 2 years. We've seen the cases of those breaches as well. So how do you deal with it? So the problem in castle and moat security systems, or vulnerability in castle and moat security systems, is by the fact that the companies or organizations no longer have their data in just one place. We all have seen that the shift which is happening from on-premise to cloud, and that's one thing. But now for the employees, everyone is sitting at home, and I can say that over it's been 1 year, we all are working from home. Maybe some people have started going, but still there is a feasibility that people can be remote. So now people have the mindset that yes, this is going to be the new way of working for all of us. So how do we consider making sure that the organization is secure, the systems are secure, the data is secure? And when people say now data is the new oil, and if that oil is spilled everywhere, how will you make sure that remains secure if it's spilled everywhere? Is it possible? Is it so easy to clean that data? Is it so easy to clean that oil? No, it is not. And which makes it more difficult to have a single security control for an entire network. Like you've just firewall, no, it's not going to work. So castle and moth model ensures that the cyber defenses against external threats. But how about those insider threats? How should we deal with it? So those things keep coming into the mind. Like I think about, okay, this is the problem. This could be a solution. But no, this is again another problem. So how do you deal with that? And of this slide must be is familiar to you, especially the people who are working on the networks. That this whole architecture, wherein um, there are different sections, there are different zones that are there. There's a trusted zone, there is an untrusted zone, there is a DNZ zone, which is demilitarized zone. So we have categorized, and all the zones are segregated by the firewalls, by IDS, IPS, and so many other systems that we have in place. So how should we deal with these kind of network? So here, each zone is granted with some level of trust, which determines that which network resource has access to what system, and then what permissions they have. And then through this model, protection is given by building multiple layers of defenses. But if somebody gets into the network, what happens to the multiple layers of defenses? Are we going to have something which is secure enough? No. Once somebody gets into the network, once somebody gets into the home, how will you remove them? That's the question. So can we trust insiders? Yes or no? Then do we have only one door? Like if they get into it, is it practical? Can we protect everything from outsiders? Is it practically possible? I don't think so. It's practically possible. So what about the cost of protecting the non-critical information? Like if you have non-critical information and you, is it practical? No. Even about your network, or even if about your the whole hub. So in the old model, network packet firewalls are there to protect the tightly controlled networks. Then all the traffic could be traced back and can be marked as inside and outside. But this has changed. Now the workplace or traditional office premise to homes, to VPNs, to business trips, or to remote connectivity, way of working has changed. We have become perimeterless, and today's environment is totally different. Privileged access not only covers infrastructure but databases and network devices. How can we forget cloud environments? And it also includes big data projects. It must be automated using DevOps. So we have started speaking a lot about it. And even so whenever I talking about their strategy, their framework, or something that they're trying to do around zero trust, I just look at it, and then they are coming up with terms like DevSecOps with zero trust, ZTN for this thing, this thing. But again, the point, it all boils down to the minutest of things. How shall we safeguard an organization? So it all boils down to that. Whatever we do, whatever we are trying to do, we are trying to actually make sure that our organization is safe. And when we are spending so much money on security breaches every year, but are we getting more secure? We are actually getting less secure, because attackers are building new strategies to attack into the system, or trying to hack into the systems, fetching the data, or not just that. Okay, so coming back to the topic, here, uh, when we talk about the breaches statistics is like growing every year, and every year is actually a big number. So cybercrime cost is supposed to be increased to 6 trillion. That was by Cybersecurity Ventures. But now, if I tell you, there was new stats which I could see that it has already reached 8 trillion, which is a huge number for cybercrime cost. And if I talk about average cost for a data breach, so that is supposed to be 3.62 million. Again, this is all was predicted. This all numbers were predicted that, okay, this is the number it's going to be. But what has happened? The whole paradigm has changed. Especially 2020 has changed a lot of things. People move to cloud so fast. A lot of data breaches happened, and what so on and so forth. Like, things just happened. Now, if I talk about data breaches, privilege access abuse was one big reason behind the data breaches. So 80% of the data breaches happened because of the privilege access abuse. That's by Forrester. Now, these figures come despite organizations spending more and more money on their cybersecurity efforts, strategy, and whatnot. So the worrisome picture is that organizations that are getting breached, they're not getting breached once, but 4 5 times. Like, we are spending more and more on money, but still nothing is working out, or we are becoming less secure. It's not that the efforts are not enough. The organizations are doing everything possible, hiring best of security staff, best of tools, and everything people can think of. And if we talk about the last year things, we've seen huge amount of shift towards SolarWinds attack. Like, it just came out of the blue, and people were like, oh, this has impacted us big time. And so it shook the industry by a huge number. Now, if I talk about the whole network trust, can we trust the client? No. Can we trust the server? No. Can we trust the network? No. So it all boils down to, shall we trust or not? Where exactly shall we head towards? And that's when we are heading towards zero trust. We are speaking about, okay, zero trust is needed in an IT security model, which requires strict identity or verification for every person, every device, everything that is happening on the network, or whosoever is trying to access the resources on a private network, regardless of whether they are sitting within the organization or outside the network perimeter. So there is one thing which has happened, the shift from trusting but verifying to never trust and always verify. And that's the original three tenets of network or zero trust network are: eliminate network trust, wherein assuming uh, all traffic is a problematic traffic. Like, you have to monitor it regardless of location. It could be a threat traffic until it is verified that, okay, it's authorized and inspected and secured. Then came secure network access. So where it says that we need to adopt principle of least privilege and strictly enforce access controls to not only to the resources, but users need to perform their which are needed for the users to perform their job, but granularly monitoring their access, gaining the network visibility and analytics that it is needed, that continuously inspection and logging of all traffic internally is needed. Those all three are there. But then there are new pillars that have come up when we talk about zero trust. wherein in 2017, Forrester extended the whole original model, where it all started in 2010. So it just, they revamped it. And they started talking about these three models: zero trust people, zero trust workloads, and zero trust data. So authenticate users and continuously monitor and govern their access and privileges. Secure users as they interact with the internet. So whenever I am doing anything on my system, my things are being monitored, and all the workloads, especially if I talk about enforcing controls across the entire app stack, especially connections between the containers and hypervisors. If I talk about the public cloud, can we monitor it? So workloads monitoring came into picture, that yes, this is needed because we are talking about containers, we are talking about Kubernetes. And how about data? Like I mentioned, that data is the new oil, so we need to maintain it, and we need to safeguard that. So securing and managing the data, categorizing them, developing and making sure that when we are developing the data or working towards it, we are having the correct classification schema. Without that, I don't think so we would be able to figure out that what data needs to be encrypted when we talk about the data at rest, or even the data in transit. So labeling is equally important. And when we talk about zero trust model, uh, the network is always assumed to be hostile, that yes, it's hostile. External and internal threats exist in the network at all times. Network locality is not sufficient for deciding trust in the network, whether I'm sitting outside or inside. It doesn't matter. Every device, user, and network, the whole flow is authenticated and authorized. And not just Forrester, Google has also come up with its own strategy and framework around BeyondCorp. So these things, when they are running, the, so where exactly it actually started advancing, when people started talking about it. So if I talk about the whole access management system, first we had access control list, then we started talking about role based access control, and I still see a lot of organizations still have that role based access control. Then people started talking about, okay, now that's there, but we still see breaches happening, we still see a lot of loss of trust which is happening. So how about using the principles of least privilege? Can we have that? But that also started intermingling. Like, okay, I need to have least privilege, but then, okay, I need access to this. Okay, give me least privilege, but I want to have access to this. So it all just mixed up. And then came zero trust model. Now, when I talk about zero trust model architecture, and now it's like the whole first 20 minutes I've been just talking about it, it's because zero trust have been around for a while, but people have not started talking, people were not talking about it. So since 2019, I've been hearing that, okay, now zero trust is important. Every organization, every CISO, I can see that they're speaking about it, that yes, this is needed, this is the need of the hour, because they feel it's very important to have some kind of framework where they can have it in their organization, maybe taking it slow, but it is needed. And zero trust architecture fits every organization, even though they have different kind of system setups, because it speaks about this the organization security phenomenon, not just that, okay, you need to have this tool, need to have this tool. So the old model was, oh, you are in the network, we're going to trust you. But this new model is shifting the whole landscape. So it says that never trust, always verify. And to not trust or no one, not even the users who are behind the firewall, or not even the devices, even the network flows. So many security professionals do a lot of work around this. It's just that now we have to mix and match the whole area, wherein we have to build the whole strategy around fixing, or not fixing, but getting the pieces together. It's like a puzzle which is there, and we are joining all those pieces together. Okay, if I say it this way, that I have network and logging monitoring, I have identity and access management system. Did I bridge them? Maybe or maybe not. I have mobile device management system. Did I bridge it with the logging monitoring system? Maybe or maybe not. I have come across a lot of discussions which happened. Okay, this is so I'm getting logs from this place, this place, this place. I'm monitoring this, but this is not there. So why should I monitor it? This is not so critical. I don't think so. It's needed. I think what or it's totally my perception and whatever I've been understanding from zero trust architecture or while working on it, I can understand that zero trust is about covering each piece of that puzzle, not leaving even one piece. And if we say that we can achieve zero trust overnight, no, that is never possible. It is like a journey which happens over time. And this is the basic architecture wherein zero trust is being where people build this architecture, wherein which actually provides a better view on an organization system. So the supporting system is called the control plane, which is here. And if I go further, there are multiple systems around. So how do we categorize them? So when the supported system is control plane, every component which is there is called or which is associated with it is called data plane. So data plane is being controlled by the control plane. Then comes the protect surface. Now again, it's again a jargon. So it is made up of the network's most critical and valuable data. Not just the data, but assets, applications, services. So multiple things comprises of the whole protect surface, where we understand, okay, this is the most valuable data, this is the most valuable assets like crown jewels, or this is like a critical asset which I need to have it in a separate place and super monitoring done. Then comes wherein when I understand my whole network, okay, this is the most critical area, this is high, this is medium, and this is how I have to deal with them. Now with the protect surface identified, we can identify how traffic moves across the organization. It's very important to understand that how exactly it's moving across. So if you see in this whole picture, it's just going here and there, but again it has chunks. So it's trying to give us a picture that who the users are, which applications they're trying to use or they're trying to access, how they are connecting to the network. And this is the only way to identify the whole flow and then put a policy to it. Because once you understand it and you don't have the right policy, it's never going to work. So once we understand the interdependencies between the data, assets, application, and the whole ecosystem, we can put the controls as close as possible to the protect surface. We can create micro perimeters by deploying segmentation gateways, more commonly known as next-gen firewalls, or like the chunking down into network, so that we have granular visibility on each network. If something happens to one network, okay, let's share it off or let's seclude it and understand who's trying to do what kind of frauds, if there is an intruder who has come into the network. So we'll have a good picture around it. So once we have understood the whole ecosystem and we're trying to enforce a policy, so we need to build a good policy around the surface so that we can continue to monitor and maintain in the real time, looking for things what should be included in the protect surface, interdependencies around it. And it seems to be like a one-time job, but it is actually a continuous operation, continuous monitoring, continuous enhancement of the system, wherein like policies, if I say that I've built a policy and I'm done, is it so that once you build a policy for an organization and you never revise it? No, it's never going to happen. So zero trust also, when it gives you visibility and context for all the traffic across the users, device, location, and application, so it also gives us a new system, a new platform wherein we can change the policies, we can module the policies so that we have better visibility. Now, is it fit for the cloud, or is it good for the cloud? So if I have to put it this way, that while enterprises or even the small or medium business units or the organizations, uh, they are trying to leverage the public cloud to build their digital everywhere businesses, they they still need to balance between like the responsibility to keep the data safe, or especially the sensitive data safe. That could be around the credit cards, health information, could be around intellectual property, or could be anything which can be very valuable for an organization. So if there is a workload which is containing such data, it has to be protected or strongly protected. So cloud is basically the combination of security in the cloud, of the cloud, and while you're trying to access the cloud. So we need to understand that exactly who's trying to access it, how they are doing it, what they are doing it, why they are doing it. It's very, very important to understand that. And then only we can say, okay, now my cloud ecosystem is secure. So we can say zero trust is a good fit for the cloud. And if I'll talk about it, its implementation, and too often business leaders do not actually try and understand or appreciate the full value of like the data in the cloud and the risks of the data in the cloud. So it's very important to understand the minutest of risk that can be there for a cloud account. So there was one instance wherein I was working on some of the cloud systems. It's not recent. It's like a little old thing wherein the password was just 8-character password. Who keeps the cloud password as 8 characters? Now, how much ever good security you have, but if the main accounts or the main or the root accounts, if they have the less secure password, or the password is known to everyone in the team, will it be secure? No, it's never going to be secure. So it has to be very much vetted before using. So if I talk about this implementation, it all starts with categorizing the data. Okay, now I say that I want to categorize my data. So how should I do it? Where should I start off? So it all boils down to that, what needed to be there in the cloud, how much critical it is. And that's when threat modeling comes into picture, that uh, understanding our own applications, servers, that okay, this is my critical data. And people talk about a lot around the attack surface. So the area or the space that malicious actors can leverage for attacks, which can be massive, uncontrollable sometimes. So if I have certain load which is going to cloud, and it says that it is the sum of the data is not so critical, but rest of the data is very critical. So we have to actually save the data in such a way that we can put the right controls for the right kind of data. And another important aspect comes into the picture is that there are few things which actually falls into the toxic data categories, or the 4 P's of toxic data, like uh, personal health information, personally identifiable information, uh, and payment card. So it's very important to secure these things. If we don't secure these things, and including the intellectual property, so if we don't safeguard them and we lose them, we will be at big stake. And that's how we categorize like restricted, confidential, internal, and public data. Then comes a point that how should I implement least privilege? Like principles of least privileges, like talk of the town, and everyone is talking about it. And especially access control is something that we all are doing it. So securing the data is something which is like my utmost priority, and I've given access to who not. But think about, is it still happening, authenticating and verifying on all access, or are we automating the rules and access policy baselines? I have seen cases wherein a person who was working for a network team, he was working on the firewall rules, modifying the firewall rules. Now, when he's working on those firewall rules, managing those policies, allowing, disallowing, if that person moves from that team to a different team, let's say, for example, a security team itself. Now, in security team, you're supposed to monitor the firewalls, the firewall logs, not changing the firewall. And suddenly one day what happens, you say that there is a problem in accessing certain application or a server. Oh, there could be a problem with the firewall rules, let me check. Open the firewall rules, make the modifications, done. But was he supposed to do anything without a proper change, without a proper request? No, but the changes happened. Did we monitor it? Where is the log that, okay, this change was supposed to happen, and it has happened? Nobody knew. So there was no granular role-based access which was there. And another very important aspect, I would say, that just-in-time privilege. This is like just-in-time least privilege. This is like one great thing I've come across, wherein if you need access for 6 hours, okay, you'll be getting 6 hours. Especially if I talk about these lambda functions and all those automated tasks which are there, automating jobs which are there. Okay, you are supposed to have access for 6-7 hours or one day. Only for that period you will have access, and then your access will be revoked automatically. And that's how the zero trust architecture works, wherein it's also talks about like, okay, we need to have the whole access request monitored, map to all the apps, endpoints, infrastructure. Now, if I talk about passwords, how many of you have more than one password, like, or multiple passwords? I have access to so many systems, so many passwords, so many accounts, so many G Suite accounts. Like, if I'm managing so many accounts for myself, so is it so easy to manage one single password? No. And that's when comes the whole IAM maturity, and then that how exactly should I manage my identities, or how exactly organizations can manage user identities. So it all started with, all the applications were internal, all the apps, they had the proper internal security, and the passwords were getting managed. And the fun fact, people were just noting down their passwords on notepad, or on sticky notes, or some files, or somewhere they're sticking. Okay, from there we realized that, okay, this is not a good option. Then we changed to unified solution of identity and access management, wherein we wanted to have a huge full view of the access, like who has access to what. And we started considering single sign-on. We started considering maturing the password policies, and we started speaking about multi-factor authentication or role-based access control. Now, all of that was happening, but still identity thefts were happening, and they're still happening. And then came into picture risk-based access control, wherein we could measure, I am logging in from Bangalore right now. Can I log in from Delhi, from US, from UK, or any other place in 1 hour or half an hour or 2 hours? Practically, it's not possible. I can just feel that, okay, I want to travel, so I'm going to be reaching that place. So ideally, that's not possible. And that's when the whole question comes into picture. Can we have some kind of risk-based or adaptive access into system, or context-aware access, wherein organization have a view that user is logging on these days from this particular location, from this particular system, and that could be from a different service provider. So at that point, understanding, having a view that it's not just to safeguard the user identities, but safeguarding an organization as well. And now people are coming up with the passwordless authentication for that. So all of these things are becoming very, very important, and that's how all those passwords can be managed. And for me, I am like a person who don't like to keep the same passwords everywhere, or note down passwords on notepad. So I am using a password manager, which is keeping my all passwords, which is like, I have to remember a big password, but again, that actually keeps my account safe. And then again, there is a question that multi-factor authentication is safe or not. So what kind of systems you need? Like, I am not very comfortable in having OTP via phone or via email. So I have certain authenticators which give me a phone, which sends me a time-based OTP, or a push notification which comes to my phone. So if somebody has access to my identities, they can use my password, but they cannot log into my account. And that's how the whole context aware access builds, and wherein we're trying to understand the behavior, location, what exactly is happening with services, who's trying to access, and that's how we can avoid the digital frauds as well. In most of the banks, what I can see, and especially the reviews that are coming across, that have started understanding the need of context aware access, and it's becoming the need of the hour, wherein you are having identities, you're just adding context to it, so that you're safeguarding an organization identities, users. And then comes monitoring and logging, like how much easy it is to monitor the logs, how much easy it is or good to monitor the logs. So one point comes is that the basic um, information, or the basic aspect of monitoring and logging is visibility, and understanding, okay, these are the systems that are need to be monitored. Because if you don't have the visibility, how will you build the trust? How will you understand this is the data that will be coming from the server? And I've seen there are rogue devices which are there in this network, and people have no idea about them. Like, okay, they exist in the network. Are they good? No. So we need to understand there is a sensitive data that needs to be monitored. There could be access names that could be malicious, that need to be monitored. And that's how the whole chain grows. You have an identity and access management system, you map, we have access, context aware access building up. And how about all the data is being sent to the logging and monitoring system to see if there's any malicious activity that is happening, that could be mapped with identities, that could be mapped with certain IPs. And that's how we can, instead of doing the postmortem, we can detect it in the real time. And another important aspect is wherein we are trying to do the network management, or we are trying to have some kind of like an ecosystem which actually granularly monitor those systems and speak about, okay, this is needed in granting the access to the network in these granular ways. This is the primary way attackers can get into the sensitive data. That they might start with one location, but now move literally to the whole organization until they find out what they were looking for. So if we zone off what they have access to, what they're looking for, and we can stop them from the lateral movement that they actually trying to do. And just like nobody should have a single key or badge that can access everything. And if I talk about our own organizations, it's not easy to monitor that, right? We have access to, our badge has access to some of the things, but not everything. So especially sensitive areas, only some people have access to some areas. So really, uh, I don't want to use the critical accounts, and I want to monitor each and every segment, and that's how it will give me a whole visibility. So now comes the point that, what do we know about the users? How do we know about what are the devices? And all the access to services must be authorized. So how exactly we map all these controls? Because it's important to understand the basics of it, and the basics or the crux of it. So architecting zero trust with micro perimeters, wherein once we know our data and its flow, we can create the optimal micro networks around the whole ecosystem. We can design them so that it can best fit the security that we want, which can be used for the specific use cases that we have. And not just that, this can also steps toward looking at physical and virtual security controls to enforce the micro parameters. Now, I've talked enough about zero trust. I've talked enough about the network segmentation. I will just take a pause. Sorry about that. So cybersecurity and risk management are larger than the whole thing that we are talking about. Okay, we don't have the risk management measures. We don't have this. We do have this. So mapping each one of it, that where do we stand, and that's how maturity model comes into picture. That defining our own maturity level. And there's a lot of manual segmentation which is happening right now. Can we automate that? So humanly, as much as possible, let's automate that. So, and that's when orchestration also comes into picture, joining all the different networks, joining or having a big picture, having a blueprint around it is very, very important. So if I have to say it in few words, what is microsegmentation? It's a practice of breaking up security perimeters into small zones to maintain the separate access for separate parts of the network. Like we have segmented files which have different data, so we segment them, we monitor it separately in different folders. So a person or a program with that kind of access, like with access to some files, they will only be able to access those files, and then if I have access to the whole system, I will have access to those files as well. Now comes a point wherein how do we adopt the cloud? So earlier we had the data which is all centralized, we had defined parameters, assumed trust, security products are there. Then came now we have distributed data, multiple parameters, and we are shifting from trust but verify to never trust and always verify, and data is everywhere. We have become, instead of multiple parameters, I would say we have become perimeterless. So we have software defined subscriptions everywhere, like okay, I want to have this kind of thing. So it's all like speed driven, how fast I can reach to the cloud, what all things I can do to move to the cloud. Now when I am talking about moving fast, am I going to be secure enough? No, I'm going to be losing some of the pieces. So to cover up those pieces, automation helps, and that's how we are trying to achieve, okay, uh, compliance as a service. And that's all I'm talking about cloud ecosystem we can attain. And even when we have a hybrid kind of an environment, then also we can attain that. And another important aspect comes enterprise are enabling the data to be accessed between different users, devices, apps, and location, but keeping in mind zero trust. And that's how different zones and different policies comes into picture. So if I talk about extending zero trust to the whole ecosystem, which is security delivered, so what exactly can be done? We can have policies which are enforced on the whole system or whole ecosystem, all the servers, all the users, all the devices, all the and when I talk about devices, they're not just servers, even our handheld devices that we have, I'm talking about them also. So by having users and offices connect directly to the cloud, instead of first going through the headquarters and firewalls, how about network and cloud architecture is just simplified, and overall attacks surfaces is like minimized, because if you know, okay, this person will be going to this location, they will have access to this particular space, okay, we can monitor this space separately, then this space. Or if I'll say in simple terms, I'm a person who works in a production environment. Do I need to have access to development environment? Or I have access to development environment. Do I need to have access to the production environment? And can I make a change on the production environment? No, it should never happen. And that's when the whole policies, procedures, access comes into picture. And policies and procedures should be like, which should change over time, mature over time. It should not be like I have a static policy and procedure, we should only blindly follow that. No, that is never a good way. So we should have policies which should mature based on the organization appetite, need, and what exactly do we need. And if I talk about the whole journey, where exactly we can start. So when we are kickstarting zero trust journey, we need to gain the visibility on all the users, devices, which could include the IoT systems, application workloads. We need to have the big picture on the asset management, which is like one big problem for any organization. We need to have access policies, roles, purpose, the device type should we should have when we are using certain device, we should understand what kind of device it is. We can build the context around the location of the user device, who's going to be the owner, or who is the owner of certain device server, so that we can reach out to them on time. And not to forget, identify, classify, and map the applications, map the data, network flows, and what's happening in the network. That's the first thing. And then comes, how about when we know all of that, can we restrict all the unknown devices from the network? That could be over the wireless network or Wi-Fi, or can we have strong multi-factor authentication, and or I would say the device certificates, because a lot of organizations have started using the certificate management for the ecosystem. So certificate management is like one amazing way to monitor those systems and verify that whether the device is authorized or not. If the certificate exists, okay, the device is authorized. If certificate doesn't or not exist, okay, there's another plan B, or the route B, where the user should go. First, get the authentication done, authorization done, and then the only way to get the access. Like during the lockdown period, my system broke. I did not have access to my data, anything. And by the time the new system arrived, it took good one and a half week, because it was not so easy to get the device into a new location where I don't work, and because I was there, so I needed to get. But at that time, if I had to go through some of the policies which were enforced on my home system, so that I can access the system, organizational data, because there was a certificate management process which was there. Having the right kind of mobile device management system, because now we're talking about BYOD, we're talking about access via tabs, phones, and everywhere. So managing through the endpoint management system and device management systems is important. Then comes data encryption and patch management, and what kind of patch management lifecycle we should have. So if there is a vulnerability, we know that exists, but we are not doing anything about it, and we're just going ahead and using a system. So it's like using a known vulnerable system, and we're not doing anything about it, and that's how the breaches happen. And now, if we talk about getting mature, now when we are defining the security, so here we need to implement a system which is around identity and access management, having a single sign-on. Then comes a point wherein we are trying to use software-defined parameters. We are having multi-cloud applications access, and we are trying to make sure that we are chunking down the most critical systems. Maybe we are trying to map it in a way that only some people have access to it. Some systems might have access to it, and we're just separating it from everything altogether. Now then comes enhancing the micro segmentation to limit maybe lateral moments. That's like one big thing that we need. If I talk about containers, we need to have container security, we need to have DevOps with security, lifecycle security in the ecosystem, and we need to inspect the whole traffic, integrate everything in the real time. And advanced threat detection is again a big challenge, and it's needed. And especially if I talk about cloud, that's when CASB comes into picture and try and bridge the whole gap and trying to monitor it. And last but not the least, compliance needs is very important, and that's when we are trying to assess the whole trust and the whole ecosystem into picture, and we are trying to use AI and ML, and that's when AI and ML with security and monitoring is coming into picture. And when we talk about keeping cyber threat intel, so it is eminent that we need to use AI and ML technologies to understand those threats early and as early as possible. So identifying the sensitive data, mapping the flows of the sensitive data, architecting the zero trust networks. And can I still trust? No, you can't. We've just learned through this. And zero trust is more of a perspective than just a product. If someone says that I have these products, and I'm going to build, they have a product, it's fine. But they have multiple products, which is built over a perspective. And when it comes to identities, they are becoming the new security parameters. Yes.
So we need to take small steps when we are talking about moving towards zero trust journey. And remember, it can never build in one day or overnight. It has to be going slow, understanding the network, understanding the whole ecosystem. Then only we can say that. So I've been just reading all these articles, and I'm a big fan of some of the articles that the organization they keep publishing, and even IBM keep publishing a lot of information around zero trust strategy. So you can reach me anytime on my Twitter handle. You can DM me. My DMs are open. You can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very much reachable on LinkedIn. Please feel free to share your inputs, questions, if they're not answered today. Or I would say if you have any feedback, do feel free to share your feedback as well. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share. Prithama,
Thank
over
you
to
so
you.
much, Vandana. Thank you so much, Vandana. That was a very, very, very informative session, I must say. And I can say all our audiences have enjoyed a lot because I have a list of questions for you now. Okay, but before we start the Q&A session, I would like to do give two small announcements. Okay. So the first announcement is guys that a quick reminder to all the women attendees today that don't forget to fill out the survey form that will be sent to you one day after this event is over, so that you can gain access to an exclusive code red box bundle designed by global women leaders Dr. Anuradha Rao and Lisa. And other than that, I would also like you all to know about EC Council University's President Scholarship for Women in Cybersecurity. So to further our efforts to empower women, we proudly announce a dedicated women-oriented program assisting new and current women undergraduates and graduates with tuition assistance worth $2,500 to reach their future endeavors. So if you're interested to learn more about the program, kindly take part in the poll that will be that will be on your screen in a couple of minutes. Also, our webinar today is in sync with EC Council Certified SOC Analyst Program. EC Council's Certified SOC Analyst, or CSA, is a certification that covers everything that you'll need to kickstart your career in security operations center. It covers fundamentals such as understanding attack methodologies, logging events, to advanced concepts such as SIEM tools, incident detection using threat intelligence, and much more. Anyone with a EC Council CSA certification is eligible for 40,000 plus job vacancies globally, with an average salary of $89,000 per annum. So if you're interested to know more, then please take part in the poll that will be on your screen right now. So let us know your mode of training, and this poll will be on for the next 4 minutes. Vandana, can we start with the Q&A session?
Sure. We still have 4 minutes, so yeah, I'll be happy to take up questions.
Great. So guys, we will be having the Q&A for about 5 to 10 minutes. Okay. So the first question is Vandana, is by Tilak, and he's asking, which are the current major attacks that has happened due to vulnerability?
See, I will start off with a very known attack, which is like SolarWinds attack, which has happened because the system they were using third-party libraries, or people said that they fed the code. Somebody fed the code into the whole package, and then package was sent to across the ecosystem, and it just spread across then the whole organizations and network, and everywhere it was flooding around. So now that was one major thing, and apart from that, Microsoft has released a lot of advisories and a lot of new vulnerabilities which are coming in, which are actually needing so much of attention. There was also one Linux bug which was there. And the recent one which just always clicks me is SolarWinds, because they had issues with Orion, and then their credentials were leaked, or they were using default credentials. So that's just one that stuck with me. And then there was one I think that happened 3 years back, that was also stuck with me for quite good time, was Equifax, which they were using Apache system, and that was vulnerable. So when we talk about zero trust architecture, it's our responsibility to understand what we have in our ecosystem. If we don't know that we are using some system, whom we are going to blame? There's no one to blame. Everyone is going to blame us. And I would say that I'm sure they must have tried all their best to safeguard the organization. Nobody wants to get breached. But the point comes is that things happen that gave a lesson to all of the people, all of the organization, that yes, this is also very important to safeguard. So using components with known vulnerabilities, we should not be having in an ecosystem. But then comes a point that, is it so easy to fix all of the bugs? No, it is not. We need to have a patching cycle. We need to have buy-in from the stakeholders. We need to have the whole understanding. Okay, this is needed at this point of time, and we can have we need to have a risk appetite, that okay, this much risk we can take. But again, during that period, we need to fix the bugs, or what will happen? We will be vulnerable. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Vandana, the next question is by Ian, and he's asking, you talked about ecosystem in the presentation. So what exactly is the meaning of an ecosystem, and can you give a simpler example?
Can you repeat your question once again?
So the question is, what is the exact meaning of the term ecosystem? And can you please give a simpler example?
Sure. So if I talk about ecosystem, like I keep using this word a lot. So it's about data, assets, applications, and the systems that we have in our network, or which are part of the organization, the things that the organization is managing. That's what I meant by the ecosystem. Like if there are 10 servers, if there are 100 servers, if there are 100,000 servers, we know that's our ecosystem. If there are 10,000 users, 20,000 users, that become part of my ecosystem. So that's what I meant, that I need to have a full visibility on what I have, who I have, what they're trying to do within the organization. It's very, very important. Till the time I don't have the visibility, I will never be able to secure the organization, and even would never be able to start the journey towards zero trust, which everyone is talking about these days. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it sure does. Thank you so much, Vandana. Vandana, the next question is by Kin Lu, and he's asking, it is quite a big question. So what DLP control would you recommend that is necessary for home network? Here is a context. Users are working from home. They are using a mixture of BYOD and CYOD.
Right.
Now, how do you enforce information security as adversaries could be snooping for data, employees printing our corporate data, and accessing systems from public networks?
See, first thing is that the whole DLP process in the organization is important. That what are the controls that we are going to have? Because I worked on one of the DLPs where I implemented it, and I did not have the right kind of policies. So I need to have a policy which can actually make sure that the data which is there on my system, it's not printable. So I can have the printer blocked. And if there's somebody who's trying to print, have a printer, their access will be blocked. It's about more about micromanaging the things. But again, that can only be done on the official system. If there is a system which is being used, which is a phone or a home system, so we need to have a policy for that? So we need to consider that as well. Like if somebody is accessing their emails from home system, because we have allowed them to have a web version of the emails. So do we need to have a control over there? So we need to have email filtering or email monitoring is that time that nobody should be able to take a print or access it from those things. So we need to have a granular policies there, like understanding that where exactly we need the access. So I'll give you an example about mobile device management, especially for the phones. I have the whole phone is encrypted, even though it's my personal device, it's all encrypted. I can't take a screenshot. I can't send it to people over WhatsApp. So those kind of granular permissions are there. And it's just not because of the organization is micromanaging, but they're making sure that organization data is secure. And I have allowed them to or give them permission to have access to my phone. And in turn, I'm trying to access the corporate data on my phone. So it's a win-win situation for both. So we need to build the right policies for that. I think that's going to help the DLP protection, especially um, especially when the kind of situation we are in, that we are doing everything from home. So wherein if let's say I'm copying some password and pasting it somewhere, it's going to say that, oh, you shouldn't be doing it. Some kind of alerting mechanism that can be there, especially to handle those sensitive data, so that we don't lose our data.
Thank you so much, Vandana. Before we take the next question, Vandana, I would also like to know that one of the audiences, Kunal, has said that it was the best explanation that he has ever got for zero trust. So he has thanked you a lot for the session.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So I have to tell you something, Prathama, that I have another meeting starting. It has already started. I told them that I'll be 5 minutes delayed. So can we just take one more question, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, Vandana. So the next question is from Priyanka, and she's asking what policies can be set for BYOD devices, as it is not always possible to implement the MDM by BYOD devices, mainly personal laptops, as it is possible that these are used by staff for accessing web emails.
So it's not always, so we can do it. We can have customized policies, especially if you look at some mobile device management solutions. You can customize the policies based on the need. You can have it integrated with the identity and access management solutions. So if that's done, it's so easy to monitor the identity and access management and can be monitored easily. And if you still want more details, I can tell you which mobile device management and what kind of policies that I'm referring to.
Hello?
Here. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Vandana. I think your meeting has started. So thank you so much for the lovely session. And thank you so much to all our audiences for coming to our session, and we got to know a lot about zero trust. Thank you so much, Vandana. And with that, guys, we will be ending today's session.